I can hear nothing. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear anything.
Can you hear us? Okay,
Right.
thank you. Good old restart. Okay. Brian, could you please present to us the dockage update, and I've included I will share my screen. Now hopefully we can hear you. It says my internet connection's unstable. Maybe that's the problem.
Oh, we can't hear him now.
Now we can't hear you. Okay. 1 second, we can hear you. Can you try saying something?
How's
Can
this?
others?
I heard that.
All right,
Okay.
so we're good to go?
Brian, can you present on the dockage issue?
Sure. So basically where we're at with the dockage for the Wabasha Riverfront Renaissance is we've determined that docking at the project site is not feasible. The size of the vessels that are desired to dock there would all, in any location, basically along the entire riverfront, I guess south of Beach Park, would extend into the designated navigation channel. So there's basically no location along the project site or.
And Brian, can I just interrupt quick? So we've got this image here shows the current proposed site, and here are estimates of this is the navigation channel and this is how much the dock would go into the navigation channel.
That's the boat. Yeah, it's actually the vessel. Yeah.
Oh, that's the vessel. Okay.
Yeah. And so the interesting part about this is when we talk to, we've talked to several of the permitting representatives. We talked to the Corps of Engineers, we've talked to the DNR. Nobody will give us a firm answer on whether it is prohibited for a vessel to dock such that it is extending out into the navigation channel. The Corps of Engineers has basically said, if you want an official answer on that, you'll have to submit a formal permit for an application for an actual project, and then they'll run it through their regulatory process. But based on information that we've gotten from the, I forget which boat company it was, or which, if it was the American Queen or the Mississippi Queen, but they've said when they have docked there in the past that they've gotten complaints from the tug captains about it being a safety issue. And that's the real issue here, is the vessel sticking out in the navigation channel that close to the bridge crossing, and it being a safety concern for tugs as they and barge traffic as they come under the bridge. So but based on the information that we have and that we've gotten, we don't think it's feasible to do it. And even if you were given, what we understand is even if you were given permission to build a dock facility there, they don't necessarily permit the vessel that docks there. And even if you got a permit to build the facility with the intent to dock those large vessels, that if tug captains expressed the safety concern, they could basically prohibit the docking of that large vessel for over safety concerns. So then we moved on to the question of, okay, well, if we can't dock there, where can we dock? And if you go to that next page, Caroline, that she showed, we basically looked up at Beach Park, and we had AMI look at, well, what does it look like up at Beach Park if you were to dock a vessel up there? And so this drawing shows, again, the limits of I think this is the American Queen, yeah, 410 feet long, 95 feet wide. And the stern would barely extend into the channel slightly there. So even there, you're sticking out into the channel a little bit. Probably less of a safety concern there because it's upstream of the bridge, and the barges aren't trying to navigate through that narrow section under the bridge. But even this would be, potentially an issue down the road if they want to stop on a regular basis, which we don't understand that they want to stop for anything longer than, part of a day. But as you folks who live in Wabasha know, there's barges that go through multiple times a day too. So we looked at this. This is potentially an issue too. But again, to get a firm answer, or hopefully a firm answer, we'd have to run through a permitting process on this, which would take some time. But the other question we had with this was whether we would even be eligible to use project funds for the Wabasha Riverfront Renaissance to construct mooring facilities at Beach Park. And I think that's all we'd be talking about here, would be some pilings out in the river, basically for them to tie up to. And and then they would drop their gangplank down on the beach, and maybe we'd construct some kind of a pad for the gangplank to drop onto and lead people to a sidewalk. But we'd be way up at Beach Park, and does that fit the intent of the Wabasha Riverfront Renaissance project? So that's where we sit with it. And I guess we'd like some guidance on how the Port Authority feels like we should proceed here. If we should pursue investigating something at Beach Park, whether we should pursue a formal permit application for something at the project site.
So, Brian, this is Craig Baldwin talking. So I have some questions. One is the existing fishing dock that we have out there, does that extend into the shipping channel?
The dock doesn't, but a large enough vessel might. And we're talking about well, let me explain too. So what's currently being proposed right now and what's included in the project plans is just the larger floating dock, larger than what you have now, and some new pilings that would be designed to handle the Pearl of the Lake, a vessel the size of the Pearl of the Lake that came down from Lake City. Or there was also and I forget the name of the vessel, I apologize, but it's the Winona State yacht, for lack of a better term, that sometimes comes up from Winona. So it's something larger than somebody's recreational vessel, but that's what's being laid out right now, is just a larger floating dock with a gangplank that meets ADA standards under certain water level conditions, with a winch on it so that the gangplank can be raised up above ice level, and so maintenance staff doesn't have to completely remove the gangplank in the wintertime. So that's what's laid out in the plans right now. If we were to do something for a larger vessel like the Queen, if this permitting issue and navigation channel issue weren't an issue, likely all that it would be a larger pad for the long bow gangplank for the American Queen to drop onto, and then some additional mooring piles out in the river for them to tie up to. So it's not a significant amount of additional infrastructure that we'd build if the American Queen could dock at the project site, but it's just a question of whether it's worth spending any money on that if there's going to be questions of the permissibility of that happening, or safety concerns down the road that would prevent them from docking there.
So, Brian, that was one of the questions that was posed earlier tonight by Councilman Sulla, was whose regulations are they? Is this the U.S. Coast Guard, or is this the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers?
Well, it's both. So the Corps of Engineers is responsible for the navigation channel, but the Coast Guard is, my understanding is they're the safety arm. So that's where it gets a little fuzzy, and we haven't been able to get any straight answers from anybody on can you dock a vessel that extends in a navigation channel or not. And the Corps has told us unofficially that, well, yeah, you can, provided that it's not a safety issue. And well, who determines whether it's a safety issue? Well, what we've been told is that, well, it's tug captains that complain, and the Coast Guard evaluates it, and then they follow up on it. So, even the suggestion of the Corps of Engineers has said, well, if you really want to know if something's permitted or not, you have to run through a formal, permitting process. I'm not sure what that would result in, because they evaluate the dock facility, the infrastructure itself, and whether that's permitted through their process. But I honestly don't understand, and they haven't given us a clear answer on, do they permit the vessel itself docking there? So the marine engineers we've hired to work on this is AMI engineers out of Duluth, and they do this all the time. And their recommendation is that if you are planning a facility where the vessel will extend in the navigation channel, that's not a good idea. But as far as somebody telling us formally that you're not permitted to do that, we haven't gotten that answer. But their recommendation is it's not a good idea.
So Brian, this is John.
I'm sure you looked at it, but there used to be an old mooring ring, if you will, or a kind of a docking station just downriver from where the fountain is. So kind of on Lawrence Boulevard. And I'm wondering if that's far enough downriver and the river kind of tucks in a little bit, if you could get something in there. My concern is that I think we need to review the language in the bonding, right? And if we've got to make some attempt to have some access for larger boats and whatever that might be. And if we can say we've improved the infrastructure at that mooring station, for temporary dockage of a large boat, be it for whatever reason, a 4-hour stay or a high water issue like it was the 1 year here, then maybe we've accomplished what we should do, and then we can worry about our dock project as its own, and we can certainly tie up the Pearl Lake or whatever there still and not have an issue with it. But
Can you share that map again, Caroline, the first one?
Mhm.
I'm assuming those in the room can see it. But yeah, John, to answer your question, we did talk about that. Tony and Dave Woodley and I met out on site, and you can kind of see the edge of the channel there. It really doesn't widen out that much as you go downstream. And if you can picture that red box downstream quite a ways, it would still extend into the channel. What we talked about was that, the further you go downstream, the more maneuvering room the barge tows have, because they're not restricted by the bridge anymore. And Dave even talked about after they get under the bridge, they start making their turn and move to let's call it the north side of the channel there. And so it would be less of an issue further away from the bridge, but it still is in the navigation channel. So when AMI looked at this, they say, well, yeah, it might be better, but you're still at risk down there for somebody making a safety complaint, which I think I mentioned it before. That's when the American Queen, I think, the guy who is responsible for their boats and their docking facilities and all that, he had indicated that in the past, when they have pulled up kind of that beach area just downstream of the fountain, that's where they had docked before, and they had gotten complaints. Go up, Caroline, to the other one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they had gotten complaints. That's part of the reason they were concerned about doing is they'd gotten complaints from tug captains before. So I don't know if I really answered that, but yeah, further downstream, it's less of an issue because you're not close to the bridge, but it's still in the channel. And the other thing, questioning about the large vessels and the bonding language, I guess that's why we're sizing the floating dock and the pilings to handle, a larger vessel. You could call the Pearl of the Lake a larger vessel. It's not the American Queen, but it's a larger vessel. The language in the bonding is somewhat ambiguous with respect to that. I think we would admit that the intent was to accommodate something like the American Queen or the Queen of the Mississippi, but it didn't specifically say that either. So I don't know that you're at risk for
undermining that language, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you could argue that you are providing a facility for larger vessels. You're just not providing it for as large as the American Queen or the Queen of the Mississippi for good reason, I guess. I think the bigger question is if you tried to do something, up at Beach Park, which I don't know if anybody has any interest in doing, to be honest. I guess that's a question, but does that fit the language of the bonding bill, being that far separated from downtown?
Yeah, I think that's a non-starter down there. I do.
So I'm kind of, back in the 90s, we used to get
Absolutely,
the Delta Queen and
all the time.
American Queen, and they would tie up somewhere between Pembroke and Bailey.
Yeah.
So it's even farther down than it shows right there. Was that still a problem? I mean, how did they tie up there if they were extending into the channel?
Well,
Yeah.
I think they could come and tie up right now. They could tie up right now, and I think the issue is, are you going to get a safety complaint? And is somebody going to prevent them from doing it on a regular basis as a regular stop? I think when they've stopped before, it's kind of been a one-off. Correct me if I'm wrong. From timing, they've done it several times, but now you're building a permanent facility for it, and I think the intent is to try to get them to do it on a regular basis. And is that going to be a safety issue down the road? And I think we've heard that in the past it has been, and we're just not getting a clear answer on the permissibility. We're not getting a clear answer that yes, you could build this and it won't be an issue down the road. In fact, we're getting the opposite. We're getting an answer that seems to say that, well, you could do it, but it might be an issue down the road.
Well, the Corps is gonna bring their 4-deck boat up on August 13th.
Yep.
And, I wonder if that's a good time to try and approach this problem. Their boat, that 4-decker boat.
That big boat, yeah.
So
We
are
can
they
ask,
in the channel when they have that boat in?
they're narrower than the American Queen, but yeah, we've asked everybody we know, and AMI has asked everybody they know to ask at the Corps about this, and we keep getting the same answers that, well, if you want to get a firm answer from regulatory on whether you can build something here that's meant for vessels that will stick out into the channel, you need to go through a formal permitting process. And they've said that basically what they know of about vessels docking into the channel, extending into the channel, is that the Coast Guard regulates that based on safety complaints.
Do you happen to know how expensive it is to apply for the permit?
I don't think the permit itself isn't that expensive. I think it's just a matter of timing for that.
So if we push forward, Brian, on the proposed dock that would handle these smaller tour boats, if you will, and we continue to try to pursue some sort of permitting for larger boats, we keep the project moving, and we still hopefully can accommodate those larger boats, but more at that mooring kind of a scenario than actually docking it at the open space.
Yeah, they're somewhat mutually exclusive. One isn't predicated on the other. So yeah, we could proceed with the floating dock. Even if we knew it was permitted and you wanted to proceed with it anyway, they would be somewhat separate facilities from each other, and we'd have some time to go through that if that's what you wanted to do, and get some more formality to our answers we're getting from people.
I think that might be the right angle. What do you guys think? Any comments or thoughts on that? Greg, you think that's
Yeah, I thought we were going ahead with that floating dock.
anyway, right?
And accommodate smaller vessels, and how many stops are the Queens planning to make? They don't usually.
Well, no, and they were here this weekend, I think, or this last week, but by coach, because they were in Redwood.
Yeah, they're coming by boat now, is my understanding.
And the Mississippi Viking Cruise Line is coming next year. And
Which those are narrower boats.
Yeah, so that'll be.
That would, yeah. No gangplank though.
Right now, they plan to stop in Redline
Yeah.
and then bring people to, one of the day trips is bring people to Waukesha
Right.
by bus. Or by Shane.
The Quarto boat is 58 by 241 is what Chuck is saying in the chat.
Okay. So it's like 58 narrower, so it won't stick out in the channel.
The other thing
Brian?
that you might know later down the road too is that the other issue here with this is budget. So we're talking the Wabasha Riverfront Renaissance project budget and the bonding funds, I think we're still waiting to get the guaranteed maximum price from JE Dunn on the project as a whole. But based on all the prior estimating that's been done, the Big Joe Alley, the open space, and the floating dock improvements eat up all of the available budget. So even though what we're talking about isn't, I don't think, a monumental additional cost with additional mooring facilities and a pad for the Mississippi Queen or the Queen or the American Queen, there isn't necessarily budget available based on the last estimates. But what we'll know further down the road is once they establish the GMP and they get into construction, if there are some cost savings as they move into construction and there are, funds available, you'd know that down the road. But we'd also know it, I guess, when they establish their final GMP. But I'm doubtful that it's going to come back less than what they estimated prior. So
Correct. So moving forward with our most recent plan with the smaller floating dock, will there be a requirement for permitting for it? Or do we just get some written permission or something? What do we need to do to get that so we're not building it and having to float it downriver later?
there'll be permitting for that. We're gonna have to get a DNR. Well, we'll likely have to get a DNR working public waters permit and a Corps of Engineers permit. So I guess what we'd probably propose to do is to, when we submit for those permits, we'll submit the theoretical mooring facilities for the larger vessel and try to make the intent clear on what's being proposed there and get a formal response from the Corps on what issues you might face with that, if they're willing to give it to us.
Okay.
We can kind of combine that process together.
Okay.
And then I think, Brian, even if we get a cost estimate of what would this be as a separate project, that would be helpful information as we might see opportunities for economic development projects, or we look at making the support authority project. So.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Thank you.
Very good.
And then, Brian, I don't know if you need to leave right away, but if there's any questions on your invoices, I thought it would be helpful to, just if you could hang out for that.
Okay. No problem.
All right, so we've done that. We've got, let's move on. So number 2 is approval of the minutes from our last meeting. You guys have had an opportunity to review them. If so, and there's no changes, a motion to approve. Got a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Tyler, how are you, sir?
Doing financials, as of the June 30 bank statements, we had a total fund balance of $507,304. Deposits in June, we received a tax settlement from the county that was $46,711. Got Jesse's auto loan payment, COVID loan payment, and a small amount of quarterly interest. And the only payment made out was the city staff support that was approved at last month's meeting. Any questions on that?
If there's no questions, we'll move to accept the.
Yeah, I have, one question.
Go ahead.
Somewhere in here, I don't know where it was, but we were showing the payments by the restaurants. Is that gonna come up later?
Yeah, that'll be later.
All right.
That's under general business. Number 3 looks like.
Got it.
Kind of a separate animal, so. Move to accept these financials as they stand.
Don't move.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Post same sign. Thank you. Now we gotta pay bills, right? Let's jump to Bolton and Mink since Brian's here right now. The Bolton and Minks, and this is for engineering, this is for work on the DMMP, the section 217. This is for preliminary port design, so that's part of the Port Authority. And then work on that grant application for the federal funds for the port project. So those three items, Brian? Right?
Yes, that's right. Yep. Basically the DMNP stuff for basically the meetings we've been having with the Corps on them by what had been a bi-weekly basis until we took a couple weeks off here. Yep. And then the preliminary design, EAW and permitting, that's what you approved moving forward with here last month, I think it was. And then the PDIP grant application, which is due at the end of the month here, which you approved moving forward with in May.
Right. And that grant proposal is moving along?
Yep. I was supposed to have a draft here to look at today. I didn't see it, but I'm just getting back from vacation too, so it might be in my inbox. So.
Poor Brian, he got back from vacation today and he loves the city of Wabasha so much. He's at our 7 o'clock meeting, so thank you.
I had to comb my hair even. I hadn't combed my hair in a week. I had a baseball cap on for vacation, put on a collared shirt, and kind of a shock to my system here.
Well, welcome back and thank you. So I know we've talked about this a little bit and I don't want to open up a can of worms, but we're expending some of this funds with the anticipation of probably really no recovery on these funds because this isn't part of the bonding project, which we talked about. So the Wabasha Riverfront Revitalization Project, the funds that we've been kind of expending for that, we can expect some of that back, right?
Well, let's talk about that on those
Okay.
legal invoices.
And legal
Yeah.
invoices.
Mhm.
On these, this is just an expense we're incurring for the development of this project.
Do you want to comment on that, Brian? On the fees listed in this invoice, can we expect to be able to retroactively get reimbursed for those in the future?
You know, like through the PDAP and PDIP and can we utilize funds for this or not? And it's just I don't know that, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I did look at the PDIP application, which is the one we're working on now. And yeah, you are able to recover some expenses prior to award of the funding. The MnDOT PDAP, I'll be honest, I'd have to look at that, but I'd be surprised if you couldn't. And I know that, and actually on your bonding request, I don't know the answer to that. So I think the answer is it depends on the funding program. Some you can, some you may not be able to, but either way, I know that there's going to be a local share of the project and that you're going to have regardless of funding. And I do know that when you bond for that, you are eligible to reimburse yourself if you pass the proper resolutions, because we've done this before, and Mike Bubani's more the expert on that. But when you sell the bond for your local share of the project cost, there's a reimbursement resolution that allows you to reimburse yourself for project costs that were incurred prior to the bond sale. So it just depends on how you shift the numbers around here, whether some of the prior incurred expenses, if they're eligible, we'll include them in the grant funding as an eligible grant cost. If not, it's got to shift to your local share.
I think the most important thing is that me and Tyler will make sure we're carefully tracking these, and if there is an opportunity to get reimbursed, we will, or at a minimum, we can count it as our local match, which every single grant expects us to be contributing locally
Something,
towards the
yeah.
project, so.
And we're trying to separate, and I can help with this too down the road, 'cause we've got this tracked, but these different tasks you see. So the DMNP in section 217D, that may not be an eligible project expense, because, that's been going on since 2017.
Right.
The task 2, that would likely be your eligible reimbursement costs, possibly the grant application, but maybe not, but that's going to be a minimal cost. So we're trying to separate this out so you can track it for those purposes down the road.
Perfect.
So not a question for Brian, but just a question for us. So why is the 217D found on just the Port Authority?
Because it's a Port Authority project.
Doesn't that affect everything? I mean, isn't that more than just a port facility though?
No, it is a port facility.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's all
Yeah. So, and as part of that, it would be an agreement that the Port Authority, the Waukesha Port Authority would be developing and working with, the Port Authority would be doing that with the Army Corps,
Okay,
not the city.
see, I thought the port facility was just part of the management plan. I thought there was more to the dredge management plan. than just the port.
So yeah, the DMMP, right, the dredge
Yeah.
management. What is it, Kim?
Dredge material management.
Plan, all right. Yeah, that's the big overlay plan, right?
Right,
So our part of it is how we're gonna manage the dredge materials, and so we've made an agreement with the Corps on that part. So that part is our part, and that 217 is our part.
okay.
That's
So
the mechanism to make that work.
Okay,
Brian, do you want to comment? I would actually agree that if it's anything with the dredge material management plan, technically that's more broad, but I'm just thinking the hours that are invoiced, are those more specific to the barge terminal? Or is that time on the broader plan?
Under that task,
Yeah. Mhm.
under that task 1, that DMNP in section 217D,
Mhm.
that's all of our time that we've spent basically that's limited to all the meetings with the Corps that we've been having since this started. And the other work that we did evaluating alternatives in the very early stages of this, when we were, you were hiring, I think you hired another consultant. I don't think you did. You hired another consultant to evaluate alternatives, and we were evaluating alternatives way back when this first started. So there were a bunch of costs under that. But recently it's just those meetings with the Corps of Engineers to work through that 217D agreement.
Mhm.
So Brian, was I off base in my explanation or my assumption?
Well,
I know it's probably not a question she asked.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, the total, if you looked at the total amount you've spent probably on us and on, Flaherty and Hood related to that 217D stuff from the start of this, I mean, it's a community issue, right? Diverting the sand, trying to come up with a solution for the sand problem and avoiding what the Corps of Engineers was proposing originally was a community issue. I think you could argue that wasn't necessarily associated with the port project. But now when we get down into specifics on the design, EAW permitting and things that are specifically associated with building the port, that is the solution to the problem. That's clearly a port project.
I'm okay with paying all 3 of
Okay.
these sections, if you will, 1, 2, and 3.
I'm not positive, but Tyler, is it accurate to say that prior bills have been paid by the city
Yeah.
with regards to this? So this is maybe one of the first ones you're seeing as it's transitioned more to barge terminal.
sure.
So, but I think if in the future, we could make sure that this is specific to section 217D rather than the larger project or have them split those costs out, maybe that's a possibility.
Yeah, because when Flaherty and Hood was initially kind of arguing our case, right? That was a city cost.
Right.
But I see this now as a port cost because we're in the nitty gritty of the development of that agreement. The 217, we're the ones that are making the decision of the tipping fee and all that kind of stuff. And we're gonna be benefiting from, that's where this is coming from. That's where this money or this billing is coming from.
Okay.
Are you sure these haven't been on? I recall invoices going back quite a ways coming to the port for
All
this.
right, we'll look into it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Name, and that's why I just.
Yeah.
alerted you. Okay. We will find out the
Break it out.
facts in terms of who's been charged what. But I know that we've had a lot of bills go to the city and we've got a lot invested in these projects.
Oh,
yeah, big one.
Yeah. So, okay.
All right. Any other discussion with respect to Golden Mink's bill? If not, I'd accept a motion to pay this.
So.
Got a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye, pull same sign. All right, that was covered. Thank you, Brian.
thanks, folks. We'll see you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I better get to hear you.
All right, let's pay. Where are we at now? All right, we're gonna do Flaherty and Hood.
Yeah, so similarly, this is for 7742.50 for their time, Flaherty and Hoods on environmental regulatory on the Army Corps of Engineer dredging matter. And again, I think this is coming before the port as this project has transitioned, but that I think might be, is our take on it. Yeah, I think this project is tricky from that end, but so this is 742.50 for Flaherty and Hood's participation in the project. And then this is for the Eagle Center specifically. And this is where we are hoping that this will be reimbursed out of the bond funds. And I think this, I actually need clarity as well, is again, just the nuances, and this came in terms of paying for staff, is the Eagle Center a port project? Or do we have the city pay this bill and get reimbursed through the bond funds? I don't know. I'm just kind of questioning that.
So, the environmental regulatory engineering thing, that makes sense for us,
Mhm.
right? Okay,
Mhm.
so that's us.
This
These
is the
two,
lease. Yeah.
these two, what?
A lot of lease talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
That is
And
now a council matter, so maybe we can take these off and put that on the council
Yeah,
agenda. Yeah.
because the reality is that, we will ultimately be, I guess, I don't know if I'm gonna use the fiduciary for this, the money will funnel through the Port Authority, this port project, but the relationship is with the city. It's a city fee title property, right? And it's the city's.
Okay. I honestly think it's the city of Wabasha getting the bond funds, so
Is it? Yeah, okay.
I apologize for the confusion. Again, it's,
Right, so that's
so
not.
we'll take these off, they go to the city.
Move to approve the $742.50
This one off, okay.
at all.
So, invoice 16225 is then denied and will be moved to city council, but 16324, I think we need a motion on that, which is the 742.50.
Yeah,
Okay.
we got a second? All in favor? Post same sign, that one's good, okay.
And 16320 was going to city council.
Yes. All right, let's move into general business. We have Sita here with us tonight. Again, thank you, Mr. Gassner, for being here. Welcome back to Wabasha. We are much farther along than we've ever been before. We have before us a contract for professional services and a work plan for 1 day per week, but it's actually with an extra day. So it's a 5 day a month contract, right?
Correct.
We've seen some we've got some examples here as well. Is there anything you want to speak on with respect to that?
Not in particular, I was trying to, based on the conversation that we had at the last meeting, trying to figure out the best way to illustrate kind of our mindset in our communities. And so that's why you have kind of a variety of documents there. One is kind of a generic 1 day a week work plan that we send out to different communities that we're talking with from time to time. What I did then was take the items that Carolyn had sent me and just kind of put some thought to potential action items under each of those 7 priorities. One of the ones that was called out specifically in our discussion was childcare. So one of our communities had gone through a process with regard to exploring the childcare crisis. And so I put a document in there with regard to the steps that they undertook. And then there are 2 real world examples of work plans from a couple of our communities, one over in Blue Earth, which is a 4 day a week contract. And then the other is in Cold Spring, which is a 6 day a month contract. So you guys can get some kind of real world look at what those work plans kind of look like. And you can look at the difference between 6 days a month and 20 days a month, or 16 days a month.
A year.
A month. Well, with 16 days per month, that's a year-long work plan, correct?
Got it.
I think what I particularly thought was a good start was the work plan here that based on the priorities that I had heard. And then he developed some specifics there. You know, that strategic plan would be a work plan. We have many city-owned land that is ready for commercial or residential development. This person could develop a list of sites, get an RFP out. Oh, or no, did I write this? Maybe that's why I like it so much.
Well, you wrote the 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay,
I
you did
put
the
the word
details.
plans under.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. You did the details. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is great.
This is well written.
She read my mind.
You know, our business resource section of the website, that would just be so simple, so appealing for our local entrepreneurs. Thanks, team. And small business counseling services, community engagement. We have the CDBG-CD grant program we're hoping to come online. We have funds to administer that. And just getting some involvement with our Main Street and Chamber, I think would be good. So those were things that I came up with based on what I heard, but certainly as part of this economic strategic plan and the yearly work plan, they're going to continue to get public input as part of that. So, and then just to kind of highlight the contract for everybody, I think something we could discuss is when we would ideally like this person to start. In my opinion, the sooner the better. And yeah, I think we'll get billed like everything else, and those bills would be in front of you, and you know, it can be terminated after 30 days written notice. I like the simplicity of the contract, not a ton of legal jargon, and you know, it's just really simple and kind of establishes a relationship. So.
Any thoughts?
So my only comment just about the whole, which I think this is great that we do this. I think there might be some people that might get a little excited about, oh yeah, we've got somebody, I'm gonna go meet with them, meet with them, meet with them. I just wanna make sure the person is not just inundated with people wanting to meet with them all the time and actually has time for some action items versus, you know, I think it's good to get feedback and survey and all that, but to have some action items on, you know, so that's just my only, that's just a general comment about the whole thing. So.
Yeah, and absolutely, I think that's one of the reasons having that work plan that has action item stuff that you guys want to see get done on it, that's approved by you. You know, one of the things, of course, is visibility. So having our person out in the community, meeting with the businesses, letting them know if there's a resource, it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Right.
You know, once you're visible, people, you know, you get a lot of questions and a lot of stuff that could come up. And again, it will come back to that work plan. If there's something that keeps coming up, then it's probably a discussion that we all have to say, maybe this is something that needs to get put on the work plan.
Sure.
And my guess is those employees are used to that with every city they go into, they
Sure.
know exactly how to handle it.
Do you have someone in mind that would be, and is someone prepared to jump on, given the work shortage, the work staff shortage in every industry?
Sure. We have some internal capacity, and that's what, I think Carol kind of asked me that question earlier today too. If you said we want to start on Monday of next week, I'm not sure that I would have a permanent person that's coming here, you know, on an ongoing basis. But we would certainly be able to start doing work for Wabasha between the capacity that we have on staff while we look for that person that would be the permanent person. That could be somebody on our team, or it may be somebody new to our team.
Got it.
It's kind of like moving that number puzzle around with the one open square. That's what we would we'd be working on. And it's all based on time, when you guys wanted to come on.
Can I ask a question about that?
Absolutely.
So I was so intrigued when I went to see the annual conference of 2019 by the breadth of experience and kind of sort of niche within your staff. It's a big team, obviously. When you find somebody, are you looking for somebody who's got the niche skills that align with our workmen, or are your staff generalists? I was just intrigued by that people have such clearly breadth and depth.
Yeah, so I guess the answer would be twofold. One is, one of the things that we think is the strength of our organization and our model is the fact that when you get one of us, you get all of us. So we really feel that our strength is in having a team of 36 individuals that all have different perspectives, different experiences, and different talents. So you get to, as a community, Wabasha, we get to benefit from all 36 of those kind of specialists in different areas. When we look to hire, I don't know how when Ron used to do this, he used to say, you know, hire for aptitude or attitude and not aptitude. I'm like, now you make it sound like we just are a bunch of monkeys running around.
That are happy.
But we understand this is a very relationship, people-based business. So we focus more on their ability to communicate and build relationships, because the technical aspects of this work we can give to them and support them with the rest of our team. So what we found was, when we hired people that had all the technical skills in the world but couldn't communicate it to anybody, it was almost worthless to our community. So we kind of took the exact opposite approach, and it's worked out. Hence Ron's
There you go.
salesmanship. Yes, absolutely.
I walked away from the conference with about 20 really good, useful technical suggestions, so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is, like I said, we have all of the technical capabilities. And if a person was in a community in Wabasha, so to speak, that a project walked in that they hadn't seen before, or that doesn't align with their personal talents or skills, they can bring other members of our team in and support them. And that doesn't cost the community anymore. It's just based on our service contract.
We need somebody like a Kathy Enerson. She'd be perfect.
Well, there you go.
She'd be perfect.
Do we have site-specific preferences, which isn't bad?
I just happen to know her very well because she was my assistant for 10 years.
Oh,
And I've
there you
seen
go.
her in action, and I saw what she did for the city of Preston, and she's amazing. But I'm sure, I also know Ron very well because his wife works on my team, and I know that the people that work with CETA are all great. But, I mean, there are certain personalities that I feel come into these small towns and don't get snubbed.
Right, and, doing this work in small rural communities is different than doing it in Rochester or Wabasha or Rochester or Winona or even Red Wing. And we understand, again, the importance of that visibility and the importance of being able to communicate as our top tier of what we're looking for in our people. And one of the questions that was asked is, do you get to be a part of that process? Absolutely. You know, we probably are going to send some folks that we think are gonna be a good fit. And if we get somebody in place that looks like, hey, this is a great fit, it's a great percent, and we get into it a little bit and we're like, maybe it's not, we can make a change. So it's not written in concrete, like this is the only person that we can have come in. We realized a number of years ago that the better job that we do on the front end, understanding that each community has a different personality and each human that we are working for us have a different personality, the better job we can do of aligning those on the front end, the better setup for success we all, the person is, the community is, and ultimately the organization is. So we kind of become the match.com of economic development professionals, right? It's just kind of trying to align those personalities. Do we get it right 100% of the time? No. In those cases, that'll be communication between you guys and staff and us as the management team to make a change if there's a change necessary.
Okay. I think you guys know my opinion on this. I'd like to see this start on August 1. I don't know if we want to, if there's any further discussion or anything, or any fine tuning we want to do. I think one of the beauties is if we get started with them, we can help to adjust that as we feel most important, what's most important. I do think, maybe it's not premature, I think we need to figure out how we're going to measure success doing this. How are we going to measure success? And I don't know if it's by achievement of projects that we've got by the end of the year, by the end of the quarter. I know the first quarter or two is not going to be a lot of, I mean, it's just a lot of organization that's got to happen before we get stuff really going, I imagine. Yeah, you know, after that, I think we do need to have some, and if it's a conversation and affirmation that they're doing what we think they need to be doing, and we can cite certain examples, then I think there's a value there. That we can support our decision to spend taxpayer money on this, right? So I think that's one thing that we need to think about as we move through this first maybe quarter with CETA as a relationship.
Do you think
Because that's
that
where
would
we
be
go.
part of the work plan as kind of success measures that then the Port Authority agrees on, you know?
Yes, I will say that's probably the biggest challenge that every one of the communities faces is, you know, on the years that we get the new Polaris plant to come into the industrial park, they create 50 jobs and build a $5 million building, super easy to measure. Yep, it accomplished. That doesn't happen in rural communities every year. So I think part of that process is our contracts, when we go through the renewal process, every year, we'll come back to that work plan that is approved by you guys to say, here's what you guys said the priorities were, here were the action steps we said we were going to take, here's the results from those action steps, and here's what we see going forward as we prepare the work plan for next year. And you guys will get to make that determination based on our priorities that we gave them and the action steps that they told us they were going to take. Is there the return on the investment that we're making with them, just like you said, to continue this relationship?
Right.
And you don't have to do that just on a yearly basis. I mean, it's 6 months in, you're like, this isn't working out. It's a 30-day out clause and we're done, you know? So I think we've put those things in place to continually make us as accountable as we possibly can be, knowing this work can be nebulous at Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely, to me it does.
Do you think that being in your roles in the community and just being out there talking to people that you will know kind of success or improvement or no? Yeah.
I think probably to a degree we will.
Okay.
We also, I think it's important that we remind the public when we're able to of what we continue to do regularly. I mean, the stuff that we've done, the length of time and investment it takes for like this port project and, you know, how quickly we've all forgotten. I brought it up the other day. I think you and I talked about today, how quickly we forgot all about the St. Elizabeth Mayo deal and what that took to come to fruition, and where we're at with it today versus where we could have been with it not very long ago. You know, so I think we need to try to do our best to promote what we do already. But I think having CETA behind us will help us do that. Is there any other discussion, or what do we want to do?
Yeah, I'll just bring a couple of points. So I think I stress that we should have some type of a plan, 5-year plan, whatever. And so when I look at this, the economic development annual work plan, drafting a draft to go from, it's going to change month as we go through the year. I think that's one of the main things. We can use it as a blueprint for where to go, point us down the road. We're going to pursue these goals, these projects. And that'll change, but that's fine. And I think that'll change partly because we're going to have coordinating and hosting forums for that. So that's what I see CETA doing is, and that's where we get feedback from the community too, when we have these forums. So a lot of people ask, what do you guys do on the Port Authority? Well, I think this is one of the things that's going to help us explain what we do and how we do it.
Yep.
And get the feedback that we want. So then we'll know where we're at with the community.
You're even gonna get feedback you don't want.
Yeah.
Not only know stuff you want. but you-
Really?
No,
No.
absolutely.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, a motion to approve the contract and move into an agreement with CETA.
Would say August 1 start.
August 1 start date, is that it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I'm probably not gonna have that permanent person by August 1, but we can start doing anything that you would like us to do, and we can figure out how that relationship starts when you guys.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Okay. Motion to approve, to accept, enter into.
I'll make a motion.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Pose same sign. There you go.
Awesome. I'm so excited.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, that's great.
Do you want to skip to the emergency loan program payment update and then do the revolving loan because of some of the questions or
It's up, yeah, sure. So let's do the emergency loan program update. Tyler, is that, we do that?
Yep, so July payments were due last Thursday, July 15th. Mark Toys paid in full that back in 2020. As far as Toby, they've made monthly payments, they're up to date. Front Porch reached out and wanted to start making payments in July, so I received their first payment this last week.
Fantastic,
So they'll be
okay.
making monthly payments going forward. Riverboat Days, we just had a conversation with them a few months ago, and they were gonna start making payments, but they have not as of yet, so I'm gonna reach out to them and see what they wanna do as far as their schedule going forward.
Okay. I think that's,
Any questions on
no, I'm happy to hear Front Porches.
that? Yeah,
Moving forward.
all last week, said they were ready to start making payments, so we got their check out the next day, so he said they'll be good to go here going forward with their payments.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I just opened the new, payment schedule with July is the first month.
Okay. You want to do the revolving loan next?
yes.
Okay. So let's move on to revolving loan.
So, kind of one of my philosophies is that, especially with federal funds, which are USDA funds, are their federal funds, that it's gonna serve the community more if the funds are being spent to help the community. And that when people aren't coming to your program with projects, then it might be time for a dive into how do we make the program marketed or flexible or more generous in the loan terms. I, in my prior position, did that, and I definitely found an improvement on people engaging in the program because the terms were more generous. So like right now, the market rate on a commercial loan is what interest? It's probably pretty low.
Yeah, I mean, it's in our 10-year rate is like
4.5, and I think that our current one is, currently, it's the prime rate plus 2%. So we charge, we're charging higher rates for people to come use our funds. And so I think probably we're in this situation that people are not choosing to do that given the larger changes in the economy. So I thought, for starters, I've been getting a lot of questions about maybe accessing Port Authority funds. And I've seen that other communities have some guidelines that get published on our website that say, here's how to come apply and here's what our priorities are. So I envision that we could do this over a couple months, but just as an initial discussion here, maybe, I'm new, so we can do loans to anyone, any business in the city of Wabasha, or it could be outside of the city of Wabasha if they have a positive impact on the city of Wabasha. Less than 50 employees. And the grant or the USDA funds require that it's one full-time job for each $10,000 loan. So that is a requirement, create or retain. So my question, and this is what it can be used for, but my question for you is that the USDA said that they will allow some additional flexibilities with their funds. And when we talk to businesses in the community with the COVID issues, people said they wanted grants, which I asked the USDA, could our loan fund be used as grants? They said no, but the maximum flexibility that they would allow would be a 10-year loan term, 0% interest, and you could defer, say no loan payments for 2 years. So what I'm wondering or suggesting to the community is I think it would be helpful to make our loan terms more flexible, more easy to access, so we can help businesses expand or make COVID-19 related improvements, because that was deemed not eligible by the state of Minnesota. But how flexible do we want to offer, and then what kind of priorities are? So the priorities laid out by our current guidelines is you all evaluate the greatest anticipated economic impact for the community shall receive the greatest priority. So that is a very, I think, qualitative or an opinion of, if you get a loan, is this going to have a positive economic impact on the community or help retain jobs and things. So the other proposals I've added would be to the thought of having a 10% equity investment on the total project cost from all of our applicants. That's not currently in there. That's to make sure that they have skin in the game, their own funds contributing to the project. So I added the highlighted items are things that I'm suggesting. And then we have a $50 application fee. I'm kind of, well, actually, I read two things. I read $50, I read $100. So I think maybe the most approved recent fee is $100, which kind of seems reasonable to show that somebody is serious. So I think the feedback that I am asking is there an interest in advertising, marketing the program, and making the terms more flexible to generate more interest from businesses who want to expand, create or retain jobs in using our funds to do so. And they do have to prove that they need the funds, that they were filling a gap that the bank couldn't fill, or that they can't qualify for a bank loan. So there does still need to be a demonstration of need.
Where would you advertise?
Just on our website. I would just put this on the website, maybe on Facebook. And then I think we have some nice bank connections. I found that if you can talk about the program to your local loan officers, when somebody comes in needing help, they do a really good job of promoting our own programs. And maybe that's already happening. I don't
I
know.
mean, a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
It's just, it always felt like it was a little more restrictive in
Mhm.
the past, and maybe like the qualified loan projects, is that pulled right from USDA or?
This is guidelines that we had.
Okay.
So is this sounding restrictive to you?
No.
Because this doesn't sound restrictive to me. No.
I hadn't seen that before, so, no, that doesn't, I know facade repairs are always brought up. I know we've talked about that before, where there's been some resistance to, is this for somebody to repair a roof?
Yes, and I think we should talk about that, is that if somebody just wants to do general maintenance, but they're not proving that it's helping them keep or create a job, they would not be qualified. But if you, I guess, did a facade repair and have evidence that that's gonna help you have an economic impact on the community, you could apply. So,
Just to the applicant to explain that.
yeah, I guess, and the USDA is relying on all of you to make an adequate judgment. They're trusting that you're gonna say, yeah, I see the connection of a job created or retained from this project, so.
I defer to those that are more involved with it, but I think it's good.
No, I mean, other cities are doing, like I know Lesueur, for instance, not much bigger than we are, and, I mean, I know they're doing loans at that rate, to get people to come, and,
To do something,
yeah,
right?
so, yeah, then what good are the funds if we never use them? I mean, we haven't,
Tyler, can you remind me the current balance on the USDA revolving loan fund? Is it 200?
235.
So I have a maximum loan amount of 150 here, and we've got about 260. So the other thing to consider is that if with doing really generous terms, we'd be kind of out for a while. But I think that's where you guys are gonna make an evaluation. Hey, this has a huge impact, and we've been sitting on the funds for years. I don't know how long your balance has been at 260 or, the last loan that you generated. I know there was a failed loan, but the last successful loan, do you know when that was at the Port Authority?
that would have been the DGH one that just paid off.
Okay.
But the Jesse's Auto loan, I mean, both of those were,
3 or 4
yeah,
3.
yeah, so there's somebody buying new business. And so, I mean, that's what this stuff's for. I mean, both of those were bank finance, but they needed to
It's
Yeah.
yeah,
make up the gap.
Okay,
yeah.
154 is the revolving loan.
okay. So maximum right now is 150, so you potentially could get an application where you give them all of the funds and you're down to zero. But I was going to ask the USDA, are there more funds available? And, and then maybe if it's a big one, you could just say, no, we want to do smaller loans so we can do more of these, so.
Well, I think that comes with that kind of those surveys and what are the needs, right?
Mhm.
Will 25,000 get you over the edge and create more footfall in your building and
Mhm.
that's the thing you need.
Yeah.
Rather than 150.
Right.
That doesn't do a whole lot. I don't know, and that's
So
something
they'd have to have 15 employees.
Chris wants to say something. We can talk.
Yes.
Well,
The expert
our relationship
here.
doesn't start till August first.
Yeah.
Some of our other communities.
Yeah, yeah.
Should ask for this before you're there.
That's what we did in all of your interviews, so.
a lot of the revolving loan guidelines in our communities, that work for the communities, is we've actually lowered the maximum amount, but we put in a clause that says, you guys have the ultimate ability to go above those guidelines. If a project walks in your door, you're like, we want this project, but they need $150,000, you have the right to deviate from your guidelines to do that. But if you say that the maximum is 25, it does a couple of things. One, it lets you hopefully accomplish more projects that touch more people in the community. Two, with each one, the risk is a little bit lower at 25 as opposed to 150. And that gives you guys flexibility.
Yeah,
I like that.
Maximum 25,000.
That's what
What
we,
you've done.
that's what we, I don't know if there's any magic to that number, but
Okay,
But with the ability
to do more
To
for
deviate.
the right projects. Okay. The other question for you is, would we want to do, the 0% deferred up to 2 years only for industries significantly impacted by COVID, such as restaurants and hospitality, or offer that to anybody wishing to expand or,
I think we do it anybody.
okay,
I don't know.
okay, yeah, that simplifies it. too. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Arguably, everybody's been affected by COVID one way or the other,
Right.
so.
The other thing that I just want to comment is sometimes I find it administratively burdensome to be doing monthly billing, but maybe it's not a problem for Tyler. Do you ever do just annually or quarterly billing to simplify admin time processing loan payments?
billing per loan for.
Yeah.
A lot of our communities don't even do it.
Okay,
We just give them an amortization schedule and
Okay.
they sign, and then if they don't make their payment, we just reach out to them. and
okay,
kind of
maybe
follow
that's
up.
what we're doing. We don't send them a bill, we just, okay, all right. We were doing that and it was like, no one was paying, and so, okay. All right, and this is where I think it will be really handy to have CETA, because they've done this and they can, because I was already thinking loan documents and things, and I'm assuming you have those, and so other applications we could just use, so, okay.
Yeah, we need to polish up our business agreement we have here. It's online. Where is that? Subsidy agreement.
So, yeah, I guess from staff, just kind of wondering, is there enough agreement today? You want to make a motion, or should I clean up this document a little more and make it and vote on it next month? What I've heard is change the maximum to 25,000, and then everything else would be as proposed and open to everybody, not just COVID related industries.
I don't have a problem with those changes.
Okay.
Anybody else?
No, I think those will be only.
Big things, it's gonna, yeah.
So what are the changes again?
Okay, just, so to be honest, it may have existed, but I couldn't find guidelines. I obtained the document that the USDA that said what we had committed to years ago. And I found a document that had been produced for your COVID. I could not find a guideline document, so I created this one based on what the USDA had. And so what this is, this just mirrors that, but so basically, this is the same. This is our current program, 50 or less employees, 1 full-time job for each $10,000 loan. This is the qualified loan projects. It's really flexible, could be used for a lot of things. But what we're gonna do is we're going to change the maximum loan amount to 25,000, but say on a case-by-case basis, more could be approved.
And you'll leave the minimum at 5,000.
Yeah, and I think that's just for
Yeah, so you're not.
time
Moving
purposes.
around, yeah.
The proposal is a 10-year loan term or the life of the security, which is, the former one was a 7-year. So we've extended it to the maximum allowed by the USDA, which is 10 years, 0% interest, and we'll delete all the COVID industries, and it could be deferred up to 2 years.
You'll have to add the language about it. We could exceed the 25,000 if we.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think that's in the footnote. Yeah, so I'll just change that to 25,000 there. And then, the USDA requires that we take the best lien available, whether that's real estate or equipment. We've added in a 10% equity investment of the total project funds, and I've said this has to be non-borrowed funds. Is that standard or difficult for people to do?
Sometimes.
Okay.
A lot of our communities go either borrowed or non-borrowed.
Okay. So maybe we could change that. Do you want to say borrowed or non-borrowed?
Well, actually, for equity, you wouldn't be able to. but
Yeah.
We
Okay,
don't have, I guess what we're saying is, a lot of times we don't have an equity requirement,
Okay.
but there are some communities that still do.
what are people's opinion on that? That means that, well, for a $25,000 loan, that would be $2,500 that you put into the project, so.
Are you guys able to borrow like 100% of a project? Or do you require a bank participation?
Don't require a bank participation. No,
Because typically the bank will have required some down, so then they've already put their sum down if they're doing the two together.
we don't
Right,
require.
Or
a bank.
people have used revolving loan funds from communities as their down payment, for a project.
Okay, well,
That's what ours has been. We've been. Yeah.
okay.
And then
Is
start
that
that.
our 20%?
I guess if we had more than one person applying and one person had equity and we saw them as less of a risk, we could choose that person over the other person if there's not enough funds.
Mhm.
What?
I go either way. I mean, it's-
Okay.
I'm not.
I'm look-
Zero, I mean, we're talking about a 10-year, 0%.
Like you said, $2,500.
Okay.
Just strike that whole.
Yeah,
We
take it
can
out.
Take it out.
Take it out.
Okay. And then they have to provide evidence that our loan is necessary to make the proposed project feasible. And so, as such as evidence that they could not obtain bank financing or there is a gap in bank financing. We will not use our funds to pay off any previous debt. And it says refinancing construction financing is an exception. And then in a conversation that I had with John, he suggested to say that we might want to not consider giving additional loans to anyone with outstanding debt to the Port Authority. Would we want to add that?
Yeah.
Okay. We don't have many people, but we have a couple on the list there, so,
That makes sense.
okay. In La Crosse, we go as far as to say, we will not lend if you owe property taxes, or you owe a parking citation. I don't know if we want to go that extreme, but
Just say like good standing with the city.
good standing with the city, okay,
It covers it all.
That does.
okay. All right.
And it sounds nice.
All right.
There's a difference between a parking ticket and 99 of them.
Right.
All right, and then these are our application materials required currently, and these were created after some of the negative experiences. The one thing is, I think we even have an application that's very brief, but I
Yeah.
think we can work out those details with CETA, but at a minimum, we're asking for quite a bit. Do you think this list is unreasonable, anybody for a business?
So now you're gonna be straight with some, probably for the loan request over, well, I guess not,
Yeah.
because we can make
Yeah.
exceptions, so.
Yeah. So,
Well, I don't know, it seems like a lot of people didn't want to do all this stuff. Is it kind of restrictive? It's a lot of stuff.
You gotta show something.
Right.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
I would have read that list when I was in business and I wouldn't have found that to be overwhelming. I think I would have expected to kind of do that.
I think most of it is what they would be putting together
For
for.
a bank.
Anyway,
of course
yeah.
it is, yeah.
And the proof from the Secretary of State staff can actually look that up online and find
Yeah.
out that they're in good standing with the Secretary of State, so.
Okay.
It
Yeah,
makes it sound very professional and, like, it's not just something that's easy to just grab.
Right,
mhm.
And this was done after we had that bad experience. the last time.
yes.
Well, I never got it back.
We got it back, but it was tooth and it was
Painful.
well played, I think, on a member's part, so.
Is the $100 application fee reasonable? This was confusing to me. It said, we're gonna charge them $100, but then we may also be charging them additional costs such as credit report fees and UCC. And I think where I've seen other programs, the application fee covers that. You're not billing them afterwards. I think the way this reads, it sounds like we're gonna bill them on top of the $100.
And it doesn't even explain how much.
Yeah, so I know that this will be work, but part of it, I wonder if we could cover with some of those loan funds and just kind of do that as our, part of our project.
Yeah, I know it, the last few, it seemed like the city got stuck with the attorney bill to draft the note, but then another time they didn't, and the applicant paid for that.
Oh, okay.
Which I think is how Port wanted it at the time, from what
Yeah.
I remember. But that was and then the city attorney reviewed everything too, so, that was all part of their.
Cost of,
Yeah, that was all part of the cost, but I mean, it's not, I don't think it's uncommon to have them pay for filing a mortgage. If we do a real estate loan, we file a mortgage, I mean.
The
that's not-
filing is $30, I think, or at least Wisconsin is.
45.
What is it here?
46.
as a rule,
46.
Yeah.
$46, and then, like a credit check shouldn't be that much. The thing I'm questioning is if hopefully we have a template for our legal documents. I think if we're asking our attorney to draft those each time, that could be expensive, very expensive. So I would like to work with CETA on a template that we can just fill in.
And maybe we could
Yeah.
just increase the application fee to cover those other fees. So it's $150 or $200 or whatever it is to cover the credit and the
Mhm.
whatever else. the
Okay.
filing.
What I can do is research that more with CETA and we can just approve it today and then, come back with maybe a revision on that.
Yeah, because one of those bills was.
pretty substantial.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
it
you
adds
That's
up.
what it was.
Yeah, it was a little spooky, which we need to figure that out as we go forward with that stuff
Yeah.
too. Let me roll back up there once, Caroline. All right, so, for loan request over 25,000, government violence, proof of, the loan committee may require written feasibility studies, business plans. Okay, so there is, or was a loan committee within the Port Authority.
Mhm.
So, Emily, I'm gonna pull you into this a little bit. Is this, remember we have the issue with the personnel committee, is that?
So our standing committee, actually, I think it's worth just asking Mike quick, but the city makes a decision. Meeting law, with a standing committee that makes standing business decisions for the city, they need to be publicly noticed. So that might be a question. If you have a standing loan committee of this body, are those publicly noticed meetings, and then how do you handle it? I mean, that's never been my responsibility, kind of think about what portion is closed, because there's so much confidential financial information. If you're a separate entity, you're not the city. So I would just run that by.
Any comment or any thought on that, Chris?
Yeah, so your loan committee would only meet when you had an application, so it wouldn't be an ongoing meeting.
Correct.
Makes it a non-standing committee. Yes,
It's
absolutely.
an ad hoc committee, and why we did that was to try to hopefully protect the interests of those applicants this because this is a public forum.
Right.
And we took the recommendation from I pointed to Kent Con because he was on it.
Baker.
Baker, right, makes some sense. Then we took the recommendation, you know, and they supported by the documentation that we had. So it was a,
And we do that in all of our communities. We ask them to have a loan committee because you can discuss things, quote unquote, in confidence. We go through people's financials and all that. It's all gonna be in the file. File's gonna be here at City Hall. Somebody can come in and request to see the file, they can look at it, because it's a
Right,
public
yeah.
one, but nobody ever does that.
well, and it's not aired out here on everywhere.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so we're good on that. I just want to make sure that we're not doing something we shouldn't be doing going forward.
And we'll have to figure out who else will be on that.
Right.
Amy and Mark were the other two.
Two.
that were on it.
We'll sort that out when we get there.
Another time.
All right. Well, the goal is to get applicants, so hopefully it'll be soon, but, anyways, and then basically just finally, you know, I guess, let's see. We're gonna accept applications on a continual basis. If somebody applies and we don't have enough money, we will inform them of the lack of funds. And then, you know, basically the biggest criteria is the economic impact portion. It says we're gonna look at wage scales, benefits paid, and they would be funded in the date in order of application. So we will make sure to get those applications dated. And then we're hoping to do a 30-day turnaround for people. So I don't know, that seems short, but we can definitely try to do that, so. And it says, so this is weird, and this is what's changed, is for me, the loan committee describes the Port Authority, which is, shall be comprised of no fewer than 7 voting members, plus the city administrator, but the city 2 commissioners shall be members of the city council, so that describes the Port Authority. We are saying, no, the loan committee is gonna be a smaller group than that. And so I think we could, I will have to send in these changes to the USDA for approval. And so I can say, we're gonna have it be a 3-person loan committee for privacy. Okay. All right. And then limitations, this is one of that I added. If there is a conflict of interest between an application or an applicant and a Port Authority Commission member, the city of Wabasha will require legal review of the conflict of interest. And we could change that, but the grant says that if there's a conflict of interest, it says you disclose that or waive that. And I just would want to dig into that a little bit further with our attorney. And maybe, and just kind of say, because it's come up several times now, to say, okay, is it okay for this person to receive funds from the Port Authority if that commission member obtain, you know, I think we should, it just would be helpful to get legal review if that comes up. Are people okay with that? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then these are other just rules that we had in our USDA, but it's just that, I don't know, I think just smaller things, but it just says applications by members of the loan committee. And I think this really means for the Port Authority and their immediate family members shall be ineligible for funding. So I think that conflict of interest is kind of eliminated. The other potential conflict is, what could be another one?
Your employer.
Yeah, or if you're a board member of the business, that could be something that could come up for a Port Authority member, so. And then if they decide to relocate outside of the city of Wabasha, then they may be required to immediately pay off the loan. But I think I'm envisioning this might be existing businesses in Wabasha wishing to expand. I see that as the user of this.
Yeah.
So, fingers crossed. Right. I think we need a motion, or do you want me to come back with a clean version?
a motion to, approve the document with the, discussed changes. How's that? Are you in on it? You gonna make the motion? Make the motion.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
We got a second? All right, fantastic. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor,
Aye.
pose same sign. Thank you very much. The election of the treasurer. I should think we should need to elect Dave Woodley.
We're missing 2 weeks, 2 months ago.
Oh, yeah, you too. Oh, yeah, you know. We can hold off until we get a full quorum, I think, on this. Is that okay?
Would you welcome feedback on my way? I've been asking around about a lot of good names, but no willing parties so far, but still.
Okay, we're good? Just like that? Meeting to adjourn or motion to adjourn the meeting?